Hello from Message Maker's studio in Old Town. I'm Burl Schwartz here for the March installment of our monthly conversation with the Mayor of Lansing, Andy Schor. Good to see you, Andy.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Lots to get to. I want to start with the Red Cedar project.
Sure.
You had a big announcement 2 weeks ago on the shape of the deal. And it seems to have changed some from a year ago. First of all, you said a year ago the taxpayers aren't on the hook at all. Is that still the case?
It is, yes.
Okay.
When we passed the original development agreement middle of last year, when I came in, the conversation was, in essence, the city bonding. So using city taxpayer dollars, well, that's not even accurate. It was the city was going to use their bond capacity to bond for $10 million and then pay that back with increased revenue. We removed the $10 million bond, so the city is no longer using city, in essence, bond capacity to do this. So that is gone, and that was gone as of 6 months ago. The brownfield plan that we announced, in essence, provides the financing for the public build. So it's a $250 million project, and the developers are responsible for all of it originally. There are different finance mechanisms and things like that, but the developers are on the hook for all of it. If we said it's $250 million and it all fell apart, any borrowed money they have to pay back.
So are they using bonding as a mechanism?
It is, yes. They're using financing, bank financing, and they're using kind of a combined public-private bond. So our LBRA, the Brownfield Authority, has a bond availability, and then the developers themselves have bond availability, so it's a mix. And then those all get paid back as new taxes come in. The bonds get paid back first, and then the developers get paid back for any costs to actually make the property buildable, which is about $50 million of the $250 million.
So the bonds are paying for that $50 million.
Yeah.
Excuse my total ignorance on this. I didn't go to the Wharton School. I went to the Arts and Sciences.
And I am a political science and history major. So yes, there will be a combination of public and private bonds for the $50 million, and then they go to banks to finance for the other $200 million.
And then how does the $50 million get paid back?
Increased. So right now there is no taxes captured whatsoever. If you've been to the old Red Cedar golf course right over on Michigan Avenue by 127, we get nothing. We have no revenues, nothing. That's right now. It's not a tax generating property. If this project happens, you have 2 hotels. You have a market rate housing, you have a senior assisted living housing, you have student housing, and then you have a few restaurants and some retail and things like that. And all of that generates tax dollars. We no longer own, it's not city property any longer, it's privately owned, and all of these things generate tax revenues, just like when you pay your taxes for your house or any private entity that pays their taxes. As the property taxes come in, they will reimburse the costs to build, which is the $50 million plus interest, because it's borrowed in advance and then it's being reimbursed. So again, if I borrowed $100 from you and said I'm going to pay you back 5 years from now, you're going to charge me interest. That's the way it works. So the property tax dollars that come in, which are only new dollars that come in as a result of the growth, as a result of these new buildings and properties, the property tax dollars would go towards reimbursement for the $50 million to build. The other $200 million, the developers basically borrow from the bank and they spend it, and then they get money to pay off their bank loan. That all ignores the fact that the income tax will still come to the city of Lansing. So we will still make money on income tax, and we will see growth and have 2 new hotels and have the market rate housing, the senior assisted living. We will have a lot of new economic development and things to do, and people are going to want to stay there, whether they're going to campus or coming downtown. So we'll have excitement of the project, we'll have income taxes, and then property taxes for about 30 years will go towards reimbursing the $50 million, which is the cost to build.
So essentially, the city is not going to get $50 million in property tax.
We wouldn't get it either way.
because nothing would be
because
there
nothing
to
would be there.
tax.
Right. The city is not getting it one way or the other.
Okay.
But the city will get income tax if the project happens.
And do you have a figure? What so over that 30 years, for example, how much income tax will the city get?
That I don't know that offhand. Any
Well,
amount that we
why-
get is
it
more
seems-
than. I don't know that offhand. Any amount that we get is more than what we'd be getting otherwise.
Well, that's true, but you're putting up quite a bit of city risk, aren't you?
Not at all.
The bonds are in no way, because you said it's a mix of city.
But we don't. None of it is city risk. If the bonds were let, and then the project went bust, the developers have to pay back the bonds, all of it. Not a dollar of tax risk from the city of Lansing.
Okay. I think I understand it better. And,
It's complicated. It's financing.
right.
It's
Now, why
complicated.
did it change from a year ago when I think we reported it would be at least $38 million in bonds?
Before I came into office, it was $38 million. Actually, significantly before I was in office, it was $38 million of city bonding capacity. Mm-hmm. And then that was reduced to $10 million in city bonding capacity. And then when I came in, in negotiations, we eliminated all of the city bonding. The real risk with city bonding was if we need to bond for something else, we wouldn't have the bond capacity. They were always going to pay back the bonds, but the question was, does the city have other needs that we need to bond for? Mm-hmm. If we need, at the time, Mayor Bonero was talking about bonding for sidewalks, and you could bond for roads, and you could bond for, we are bonding for CSO work, somewhat, a little bit. We're bonding for CSO work. We can bond to fix our parking garages. We can use bond financing for IT. We can use it, in essence, to borrow money to put a big cash infusion in and pay it off over years. If we use all of our bond capacity for a private development, then we don't have it to use for public infrastructure. And that was the concern, which is why, partially why, a good chunk of why I was supportive of removing that bond from the city so that we can have that capacity for other things if we need it. And all we've used it for so far, again, is some of the CSO work, the sewer separation, trying to separate sanitary and stormwater, which we have to do under federal law. I think you guys wrote a story about it. And we're working on that. It was about $4 million last year. We did most of the work in the Morris Park neighborhood, and we're going to do more of that because we have to get these separated. We don't want sanitary sewer going into the rivers, and it generally isn't, except if there's overflows and things like that. So we want to solve that problem, but again, it's bonded because we don't have general fund dollars to pay for that. Things like that.
One of the developers, Frank Cass, referred to Lansing as podunk. Yeah. Now, he explained what he meant was that the city government doesn't offer as much incentive as a developer would get in Toledo or elsewhere. Is the city lagging in what it can do for developers?
No, we look at finance gaps and we do what we can under state law. What Frank Cass was talking about was Michigan used to, the state. He said Traverse City and Lansing and other cities in Michigan are podunk compared to Madison or Columbus because they don't offer the same incentives. We don't have the ability. It used to be before 2010, before Governor Snyder initiated his tax changes for the Michigan business tax and other things. It used to be that the state issued what are called brownfield credits. So you would pay, developers and businesses would pay the Michigan business tax, and then they would get credits on their tax for development in a brownfield area. It became very complicated. The credits were getting sold and things like that. So you had some developers collecting credits and then basically paying no tax. So it became very complicated. But when the brownfield credits were eliminated, we basically lost a tool to be able to use to finance some of these buildings. The state would offer their credits, so it would be a credit off of a state tax. When that was eliminated, the state instead came in and said, we're going to offer some cash up front to developers, but it's a lot less than what they were getting in credits. So we used to give about $400 million in, is that right? Yeah, $400 million in brownfield credits a year until about 2010. After that, they created the CRP program, the Community Revitalization Program, where there's about a quarter of that. So now the downtown the downtown grocery store, is getting $1.5 million from the state cash up front in CRP dollars. They probably would have gotten a lot more than that if it was an old brownfield credit. This project, I'm sure, is going to ask MEDC, the Y-Site project. All of our projects so far, they ask the MEDC for cash up front. It used to be a lot more money. So what Frank is saying is Michigan doesn't have the tools that it used to have, that other states have.
And hence Lansing doesn't.
And hence Lansing doesn't have that, right. I mean, it's not actually our tool, it's the state's tool, but we can't offer that. You go into Texas, and they will, we got cities who will have funds that are cash up front, and they'll give a developer hundreds of thousands of dollars just to come in and develop. No, we don't do that. We don't offer city taxpayer dollars up front. We don't hand out taxpayer dollars for someone to come develop, and I'm comfortable with that.
You are?
Yeah.
So you don't think we need to make changes to attract more developers?
I would love to attract more developers, but I don't think we need to be giving away taxpayer. I don't think we need to hand someone taxpayer dollars up front in order to do that. It's happened in the past. The city put money into the Home Street School, and then we had to sue to get that back when it didn't happen. I had to initiate that lawsuit. So there are risks that have been taken, and I'm not going to criticize. Sometimes you have to take risks, but I have not had a project yet that I've seen that I'm willing to in essence inject cash into that project in order to make it happen. I look at a finance gap. What's the finance gap? Do we need to look at brownfield incentives? Do we need to look at neighborhood enterprise zone incentives, obsolete property building incentives? We're willing to look at some of these incentives, which is usually future taxes or freezing taxes, things like that. But I have not yet seen a project where I'm willing to put cash up front to make it happen. And the downtown grocery store was one of my most favorite things, and I can't wait for it to open. And again, they went to the MEDC, and we pushed the MEDC because they have a cash up front program. So we greatly supported that. And then we gave, again, the same incentive kind of set that we use. We worked on that with the downtown grocery store, and council passed that brownfield plan as well.
The 10.7 million the city needs to spend on Red Cedar for the infrastructure, is that correct?
10.7 million.
Yeah, well, I thought you said earlier something about 10 million.
Previously, when I came into office, the deal that was on the table was that the city would bond for about 10 million.
Yeah.
We removed that.
Well, what doesn't the city still have to spend money on infrastructure? On the plinth,
no, it's now that will be through the Brownfield Authority. They will work with the developer for a public-private mix of bonding, but the developer pays that back if it doesn't happen. Again, that's all part of the.
If it doesn't happen.
Right. If it happens, then the plinth is what we're in essence reimbursing through the Brownfield Authority. The plinth is the future tax dollars that would be used for reimbursement. It's an eligible activity. The going vertical is the developers. They do that on their own. Okay. Once we make it buildable, because right now it's in the floodplain, it's low. We have to build it in essence upwards, the $50 million to create the plinth or the integrated parking structure. That is the platform, and then the buildings are built above the platform.
But is the city paying for that, or is the developers paying?
It's reimbursed through reimbursed through new property taxes, and then if enough taxes don't come in, then the developer does.
Okay. Another aspect of this deal is whether the unions are satisfied and how good a deal this is going to be for the people actually building it. And a few years ago there was quite a bit of controversy because of the Skyview project, and they're bringing labor in from out of state. Is there a labor agreement?
There is.
And what is that agreement?
It's on file with the clerk. You can pull it. In essence, the agreement is with the developers, and it says that they will use local labor as long as it's available, as long as the specialists are there. So they have committed to using local labor.
And if local labor cannot provide, will they still pay union wages?
I don't know if it's prevailing wage.
Your part of it.
Our part is prevailing wage.
But what about the bulk of the project?
I'd have to go back and I think that when they announced it, I think they thought it was going to be somewhere around 50%, 55%, somewhere in that neighborhood prevailing wage. They have to look at at what's available, what carpenters available, what plumbers, what electricians. They've had conversations with many of the unions. Again, they want to use, we want them to use, and they want to use local labor. The argument for Skyview was that the company was bringing in from out of state, and it wasn't local folks who were being able to work on that project. That's not going to be the case here unless we absolutely don't have the workers. Now, we are seeing, a worker shortage. There is so much development and work going on throughout the region that right. That all of our, I wouldn't say all, but I'd say just about all of our workers are working, which is a good problem to have. So if they can't get the workers, they have to prove it to us. They have right. to submit something to us showing and proving it. But they have to try and get local workers first.
Will they pay prevailing wage regardless of where the workers come from?
For our portion, they have to by
right.
law. For their portion, I believe that they said it was going to be about half the project would very likely be prevailing wage. Now, the caveat to that is the competition right now almost generates prevailing wage. There are so many people working that if they want to bring somebody and they want to get somebody off another project, they're going to have to pay more. One of the conversations I've heard was there were two communities, and one community had a variety of workers. The other community offered something like $1 more an hour, and the workers literally left one project and went to the other. So because of a lot of work and because of the worker shortage, the prices are going to be, the worker pay is going to be higher because of the demand. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
The next step is what, city council? Mm-hmm. Are you seeing any problems there?
It's going through the city council's public process. We submit it, put it on file. They, I believe, have to have it on file for 30 days. And I believe council may have had one presentation on this already. They're running through their process, and I'm happy to answer any questions that come up. They did. We had, I believe they had it once in committee of the whole. They had a presentation on this, but they're running it through their process, and I respect that process. And my staff and LEAP is available for any questions that arise, and the developers are going in and explaining it to council members. So we'll see as it goes through the process. I'm hopeful that it gets approved, and we'll move forward after that.
Finally, on Red Cedar, of course, there's the huge county commissioner element, his development plans for a portion of the property that
Drain commissioner.
Drain commissioner. I'm sorry.
Yes, drain commissioner.
Drain commissioner.
County commissioner.
Yeah, I wonder why you were looking.
Yeah, drain commissioner.
How is that going?
Yeah, that happens either way. The drain commissioner is doing a very large Montgomery drain project where they're putting together a variety of pieces down south of on the banks south of the Red Cedar project. The drain commissioner is going through that process. We're gonna be spending some money on that. He assesses the different parties. It's his job to clean the drains and have clean drains. And under the drain code, he gets to control most of that work. He has been in conversation with me and my staff. They have issued an initial assessment of the different entities. So MDOT has to pay part because part of it is part of the water flow comes through, I believe it's 127 state roads. Part of it is assessed to East Lansing, part of it is assessed to Lansing Township, and part of it is assessed to us. So another area we may have to bond, we're probably going to have to do some bond work to pay our assessment off of that and then pay it back. It's not going to be cheap, but it's what he can do under the law for the drain, and it's going to provide clean water. We have a lot of, when you have, especially in the Frandor area, when you have a lot of runoff with garbage and things like that off of a big piece of concrete that runs right into the river, and it contaminates the river. So this is part of the project is going to be to clean the runoff that goes into the river, and he's getting ready to move on that. I think he was willing to hold off to see what happens with Red Cedar, because if they go into the ground and they have diggers and things like that to dig and move earth, it's a lot more efficient when you move earth together. The Red Cedar folks, in essence, are working with him to either pay him or to coordinate. We don't need to have two separate people digging up the same area, so they're going to coordinate how they do that. It'll be efficient. It'll be cheaper for everybody. So that's all in coordination, but it's going to move forward.
I want to turn to another potential development, a performing arts center.
Yeah.
As City Pulse has reported, there's
Great story.
Thank you. There's a study out there right now, but I know in the past you have indicated this isn't so much a feasibility study, this is a how to do it study. So tell me what your thinking is.
Yeah, I mean, we think it's feasible. We think we've got studies going back years to Mayor Hollister saying it's feasible, but we wanted to, the Arts Commission, the Mayor's Commission on Arts and Culture came to me and said that there were some folks out there who wanted to fund a study to see kind of the feasibility and how to operate it. So they raised the money. Several parties put in money, and I'm not going to call them all out, but
some of it though is public money, right? My understanding is the bulk of the money is generated because the public media center will put up $40,000.
Yeah, but that's not public.
Matched.
But that's not public money.
Well,
and I know you put
money.
It's PEG money, but that's not public dollars. That comes from the cable companies. And I was actually going to mention that to you.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
okay,
it's not
so
public
you don't
money.
Consider, but the city controls that money.
The public media center controls that money.
But
it's
public media center is part of the city.
It is, but it's not. These are not public dollars. They're not taxpayer dollars. We'll say that they're not taxpayer dollars.
Right.
It's dollars that we get through fee agreements with Comcast, with AT&T. So they're dollars that the cable companies pay that goes towards infrastructure. That's all they can go towards. So I guess they are controlled by a public entity. So I guess they're publicly controlled dollars, but these are not taxpayer dollars. And I think not everybody recognizes the difference to that. So the media center is putting in some of their public access dollars that they get from the cable companies who pay for rights of way. And then other entities, Community Foundation and others are putting in money towards that. And it's going to be, we met with the folks initially. Again, you put that in your story. They talked about kind of what's here and what's not, and we saw that there's 2,500 seats and more. The Wharton takes care of that area. The smaller 500-600 seat venues, we have a few of those, but we have nothing in that mid-range in Lansing and in the Lansing area. So I think they recognize there is a need, but they're gonna put together the numbers of how much it would cost, who would use it. What the operations are, what the capital campaign would have to be. So they're setting the structure. We've got a few folks who've come to us who would like to build this in different areas of town. Nothing that is really anywhere near a solid proposal yet. But regardless, no matter what happens, we're going to have to come up with, as a community, as a region, we're going to have to come up with money to invest in a build or in making this happen structurally, and then we have to have the sustainability to be able to operate this. We think it's going to be a home run. I've already talked to someone who knows someone at Live Nation, and they want to bring concerts, and we know the symphony orchestra wants to have shows there and performances there. We know that there's a lot of interest. We just have to finalize and build that plan. So you need the building and the structure and the acoustics and all of that, and at the same time, you need to know operationally there's sustainability moving forward for the center. So a lot of that's going to come through the study. They're going to give us kind of the number and put some meat on the bones, and then we have to raise the money and make sure we have sustainability of use.
Another building that is going to be taken out of the school system very soon, in a couple of months, is Eastern High School. Really a landmark building on the east side. And what are your thoughts? Now it's in private hands, it's Sparrow. What are your thoughts on how to make sure that the city gets the most benefit from what Sparrow decides to do with it?
Well, they have a new CEO, and I've had a chance to meet with him, and he is reviewing kind of all of their facility plans, and they're moving forward, and they're looking to create a proactive facility plan on what they will do with it. I made a very strong pitch to him that it's a beautiful building in our city. It's historic. We'd like to see the building remain. there are challenges in that building. I'm in that building a lot. My kids don't go there, but I'm in that building a lot. My kids are at Everett, in case anyone wants to know. But to be honest with you, I'd like to see the outside of the building needs to remain because the architecture is just incredible. You know that. It has many assets inside the cafeteria, the auditorium. These are pieces that can be used by the community. I don't know what they're going to do with the rest of it, the classrooms, the different kind of areas of the school, the nurse, the clinic, and all of that. I don't know what they do with it. I don't know. It needs a lot of work on the inside. We know that. I'm not sure about the boiler and all that stuff and the condition of that. But my pitch really was, let's leave the building up. Let's offer the auditorium to the community to use, unless they're going to use it for some kind of performance space, which I don't know. It has assets in it that can still be used for the community while they still use the building for whatever else they're going to use it for. That's been my main interest. I'm not going to tell them their business model of what facility needs to leave the central campus or what needs to move where, but I think for the community, we'd like that. We recognize the importance of this building and the history of this building, and I'd like to see it remain. And they truly had not, and I believe him, they had not made any final decisions. I think he understands the interest in many in our community of seeing that building remain and using the pieces that are usable.
All right. I want to turn to a couple of stories City Pulse has reported in the last month or so. One is regarding firefighters and that the makeup of the latest hires, the class of 2018, appear to be all white men. And this seems to be a consequence of a change in hiring policy. Was it? And I'll assume it's an unintended consequence, but was it at all foreseen that this might result?
So the consequence, the policy you're talking about, we have about 40 firefighters that are retiring. As a result of that, people promote. We have had paramedics. We have paramedics and we have EMTs. Paramedics they have something like 2,400 hours, and they are highly trained. And you have to have at least one paramedic for every ambulance. We have 5 ambulances. I'm hopeful to have 7 ambulances. We have 5, and you have to have a paramedic at all times. So it's several people per shift. Any one person is on 24 hours every day. So it's not like I just need 5 paramedics. I need enough paramedics to staff the ambulance if we want to have response. And we pride ourselves on fast response for our ambulances. We have an opioid epidemic. We have a lot of need in our community. So with the 40 firefighters retiring, many of our paramedics promoted and are going upward in the chain, and some of them are retiring. Because Lansing is the only community in the region, and I think maybe one of 2 in the state, that doesn't require paramedics to be firefighters. Lansing is the only community in the region that allows EMTs as well as paramedics to become, in essence, firefighters. Because of that, we have many EMTs that are not paramedics yet, or paramedics at all, and we were very concerned that we did not have enough. We were not going to have enough paramedics when these retirements happened to staff ambulances. So we said in the latest hiring round, where we were hiring 13 or 14 firefighters, we said we are going to hire, and anybody can apply, EMT or paramedic, but we are going to hire paramedics first. If there aren't enough paramedics or not enough qualified paramedics, then we would look at hiring EMTs in order to fill the spots. But we had enough paramedics, and we needed to hire them. When I saw the class, I'm sure these are 14 very qualified individuals who are going to do a great job for the city of Lansing, and I have faith in them to be firefighters. I also was disappointed that we didn't see a lot of diversity. I believe we had 1 Latino gentleman, but it was 14, white-looking gentlemen in the class, and I'm sure they're all very good and very qualified. But I'd like to see diversity within our department. Now, our department is very diverse right now. And I'd like to maintain that. So the first thing we had to do was hire paramedics. Now, as we move forward and we fill the rest of these 40 spots, we can make sure that we have a paramedic available for each rig, for each ambulance, and we can look at mixing in some EMTs and others to make sure that we're hiring a diverse class. We want to, diversity is not out there in the fire ranks is the problem. People are not, they're not becoming firefighters. They're also not becoming police officers and a variety of other things. This isn't just unique to the fire class. So we need to build that capacity. So we are creating a cadet program, and we're going to go into the schools and we are going to pitch people on the excitement of being a firefighter. Get your EMT certification, get your paramedic certification. We will help you if you come to the city of Lansing, which is the same thing we do with our police officers. We have an Explorer program where we recruit and we go into the schools, and we want Lansing citizens. We work with them through the academy. We're going to do the same thing with the firefighting force. So we had an immediate need that we had to fill, and we filled it. And now moving forward, as we fill in the future, we will fill to make sure that we are qualified and we have response. And we'll also try and mix in other factors to make sure that we can use kids coming out of Lansing schools that will be diverse, because we have a very diverse school district in Lansing.
Now, after you became mayor, the fire chief, Randy Talifero, resigned.
6 months in.
He's African American. Did this hiring, this decision on emphasizing paramedics play any role in his departure?
No.
Did he argue against changing the hiring policies?
No, it never came up. It never came up. When I came in, I retained Chief Talifero. I told him I was interested in continuing to have his service, like I did with 8 of our 13 department heads. So he continued to work for me, and it never came up. He gave a transition memo that talked about a variety of things, and including that was a diversity of hiring, which was fine with me. But the EMT paramedic ratio, it never came up. After 6 months, he gave me he came in and informed my chief of staff that he was planning to, maybe it was about 4 or 5 months. He told her that he was planning to resign Lansing as a fire chief as of, I want to say it was June 1st, and just be the fire chief in East Lansing. So he continues to be the fire chief in East Lansing, didn't want to be the fire chief anymore in Lansing. He told her that he was going to retire soon. It was too much to go back and forth between the two communities. He gave me a formal letter of resignation where he indicated the same thing. And we went out and we hired basically an interim chief, Dave Purchase, who was the former 25 or 30-year fire chief in Norton Shores, Michigan, who is one of the experts in the field, very highly respected. And at the same time, we went out for a national search for a fire chief. Chief Purchase, when he came in June, he went and met with every fire. He went to every fire station and met with all the folks in the fire ranks. He gave us a list of things that he would change and amend as chief, and some recommendations. And in that process, probably about 2 or 3 months after he came in, he said that they were working with HR to go out to hire, and he was very concerned that when he looked at the folks who were going to be retiring, we would be short on paramedics, and requested the opportunity to hire paramedics. And I told him he's the chief, and he's going to make sure that we have a response, so I would accept his recommendation. And we did that. And now that we've done that, I saw the class that came in and told him I was disappointed we didn't have diversity. We're adjusting that a bit so that when we hire in the next round, we will again prioritize paramedics, but we'll likely have some kind of a mix to ensure that we have a fire department that reflects our community. And I'll remind you, we're about 19.5%, we are 19.5% African American for a 23% African American community right now. We are 7.5% Latino Hispanic for a 12% Latino Hispanic community right now. We are one of the most, if not the most diverse fire department right now. And I'd like to maintain that. So now that we've managed to hire many paramedics, 14 paramedics, we'll continue to look at this to make sure moving forward that we can respond and that we reflect our community.
All right. So the whole issue of paramedics versus EMTs arose after Chief Talaferro left. Okay. The 527 account. First of all, explain to our viewers, what is a 527 account?
I am not an independently wealthy individual. When I got elected to the House of Representatives, I could not believe the requests for money for different things going on. We have a lot of great things going on in Lansing, and everybody is requesting dollars in support for many great events. So when I came in, there were several legislators who utilize what's called a federal Section 527 account. It's an account where it's not political. For me, it's not political at all. It's an account where I can raise money into a fund and then utilize those dollars to support what's going on in the community. So I can raise money for my campaign, and that is campaign related, is political. I wanted something that is charitable, is pretty much associated with the duties of the office. I was a state representative and was getting asked to do a lot of things. It didn't matter. You name the charitable organization, and I got asked, and it was an expectation that as a leader in the community, I am supporting these things. So I set the account. We looked at in 2013, we looked at the federal requirements. I had some attorneys look at it. If we didn't raise $25,000, we didn't have to report. We had to report annually with the state through the state's charitable division, which we did. But we didn't have to report with the feds because we were raising under $25,000. And I think I raised an average maybe $6,000 a year, maybe $7,000. I don't know the exact average. It was like $3,000-$4,000 a year. Maybe one year it was 10 or 15, but we never came anywhere near $25,000. So we never had to report. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to start asking questions?
Absolutely.
So we never had to report.
Right.
Last year, when I became mayor, we converted that from state representative to mayor, and we had someone look at the rules. I did not look at it as in-depth, and I will admit that. But we had someone look at the rules, and I know you're going to disagree, so we can have this disagreement. The rules for a 527 account says that you don't have to file if you're making under $25,000. Well, we were going over that, and you don't have to file if it's controlled by a state or local political candidate, and that's all it says. It doesn't say a state or local political candidate that files at the local level. It just says you don't have to if you're a state or local political candidate. So some people have looked at that and said, okay, I am a state or local political candidate. I don't have to file at the feds. Others say, well, I'm a state or local political candidate, but I'm not filing this anywhere else, so I will voluntarily file at the feds. I honestly don't know if I'm supposed to file at the feds or not, but I'm going to, because we have been immensely transparent about this. I have given the information on our donors and our expenses to anybody who's asked. I gave it to the City Pulse months ago. I gave it to the State Journal when they saw your story. I gave it to Mr. Steve Harry, who does his website with blog. I have given it to anybody who's asked. We have been completely transparent about this. We will file with the federal government because there is a clear disagreement amongst parties, and we will file whether we have to or not. And
when will you do that?
Hopefully early next week. It's extremely complicated. You have to file a form for an email internet password. Then you get the password. You have to file an 8871 just to be able to file. Then an 8872 with all the expenditures, and a 990, something POL. There's a whole order to forms. We have to collect. We know who contributed. You have to collect names, email addresses, addresses. I mean, it's very complicated what's in the form, and we have a lot of that in different places, so we're putting it all together. I had hoped to file last week. Now we have to get together all the names and email addresses, so hopefully early next week.
I believe what the language says is state or local political committee.
Correct.
And that's why you're not a committee, so that's why you need to file. You're
we
a
are.
person. If you were a committee, you wouldn't need to file because you have to file.
Well, it is technically
otherwise.
It is it is qualified under the federal charitable and nonprofit It is qualified as a political organization. That's what the form
The
says.
organization,
It
but
says
you're not an organization.
but it says a political organization of a candidate, of a state or local candidate is exempt. That's exactly what, and again, I'm not an attorney.
Right.
I'm telling you what my attorneys tell me. It says a political organization of a state or local candidate
you need
is
a new
exempt.
attorney.
I don't think so. I think they're one of the best in the state.
Okay.
But again, there's a disagreement. Yeah. You know, you've got.
But you're going to file.
We're going to
as soon
file.
as possible.
We're going to file as
Okay.
soon as we can get all the information.
Do you get the concern some people have about these 527 accounts, not just yours, but the Mayor Bernero's and other politicians, that you are taking money from people who do business with the city or hope to do business with the city? You have the biggest contributor has done a lot of business with the city.
I've got contributors, people who do business with the city, people who don't do business with the city. The contributor you're talking about is also in the city with a major headquarters, hiring city employees. They are somebody who is very involved with a lot of things that the city does. It's the same concern you can raise for campaign finance for political.
But you have to report that.
Yeah.
Why
I
wouldn't
don't mind
you have
reporting
thought in the first place, I should report this?
Well, for me, it wasn't about an IRS requirement. It was about sharing it with anybody that asks, and I was doing that from the beginning.
True. And that is nice, but
the funny thing is, this is an issue for me because I've been willing to report. The folks who use 527s, who, the Michigan quality of life, whatever, those are folks who use it for electioneering. They use it at campaign time when your viewers see mail and see TV ads, vote against John Jones because John Jones, is an awful person. Call John Jones at. That's called electioneering. That's not that is not reported. I never use it for that. I hate that, and I don't use it for that. And those people, yes, if they are purposely skirting the law, the campaign finance law, they should absolutely be filing this somewhere. I put a bill in the legislature to do this. I opposed the bill that eliminated the requirement to do that for dark money. I am almost insulted to be lumped in with any of those folks because I don't use it for electioneering. I use it for charitable giving and duties for the office that we are publicly giving out to anybody.
All right, let's get to that. So now you raised, based on what you gave us, you've raised at least $160,000.
Yeah.
You spent about $60,000. A lot of it on your inauguration.
Yes. We spent on inauguration and a variety of charitable giving over the first year, and I went to the U.S. Conference of Mayors.
And you still have, based on what you gave us, you still have about $100,000.
Yeah.
Yet you're having a breakfast this month to ask for more money.
We're going to do it once a year.
Why? I mean, you've got $100,000. What are you going to do with this money?
We're using it. Yeah, I'm using it. I get requests. I go through requests probably once a week. And we issue, $100 at a time or whatever it is to folks who request weekly. We raised originally for this and for inauguration. The inauguration was incredible. We had 700 or so people there. We used the Lansing Center. It was just a great inauguration. When I won the election, I asked our budget folks, is there any money in the budget, taxpayer money in the budget for inauguration? The answer was no, of course there isn't. I said, okay, then we need to raise money to do this. These are things that we don't pay for with taxpayer dollars. These are things that I can't pay for personally, so we raise it. I will be using this money for charity. I gave to Beacon Field. It's Beacon Field Southwest. I gave to the LGBT Awards. I gave to the NAACP. We use this fund to give to all of these things, and we will continue to use this fund, and we will continue to share the information now with the IRS and with the public, so you'll know as we go.
But if you raised $160,000 in your first year or so, how much do you need?
Well,
at $100 a throw,
we raised
160,
and I think we spent more like 70, somewhere like
70
that in the first year.
Right. But you had an inauguration, which was a big expense.
We did, and I don't know what other big expenses are coming. Again, for me, it's the same thing as I don't have a campaign this year or next year, and yet I'm going to have probably one event for the Schor Lansing Fund and one event for my political campaign, my re-election campaign. We're going to raise money because you have to build, in essence, a war chest to use as needed. I don't expect to raise more than a few $1,000s. I'll probably, at the breakfast, raise $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, something like that. And we'll continue to build. I guarantee you this year, I will spend way more than what I raise. If you look at when I ran for office for the House and for mayor, it was the same thing. In the first year, you raise a whole lot of money, and then you raise a little bit each year after, and you end up spending a lot more than what you raise. It's gonna be the same thing with this. We will spend a lot more than what we raise, but I'll have an event once a year, just for people who want to contribute towards great things going on in Lansing. Once a year, it's gonna be an opportunity for them to support what's going on in Lansing. So this will be the first one and the only one this year for the Schor Lansing Fund. And then we'll probably do another one next year. But again, it's an opportunity for those to come to breakfast. I'll probably talk about the great things going on in Lansing and thank them for contributing toward this cause. We have random citizens who give us money. We have companies. We have unions. We have folks who are interested in the future of Lansing. These are not necessarily people who are contracting with the city. I mean, it's being made out by you in this case to be kind of a very detrimental thing. Right now, look at the list. You're calling out one company, DuPont, who does have a contract with the city and has a contract with the city for many, many years before I came here. They're also downtown with hundreds of employees, and they support a whole lot of things within our city because they love Lansing. I also got money from many folks who do not have contracts, and Kyle on your staff called me and asked me, does this company have a contract? Does this company have a contract? No, they sure don't. But they're in Lansing, and they want to see a downtown grocery store, and they want to see hotels, and they want to see development. And they like the fact that I am contributing towards many of the great things that happen, including the things that I've talked about. So they want to support the city, and they are willing to put money into this fund to help support the city. And I appreciate that.
So you don't see at all why anyone might think it's unseemly for you to be building a fund that is in the six figures?
It's not in the six figures,
but it's going to be again.
But it will deplete. This is building a fund to deplete it. If I didn't have a fund to deplete, then I wouldn't be able to support all these things. I mean, my hope is that the citizens of Lansing trust that I'm going to use this fund to support things in Lansing. And that's why I was elected mayor.
All right. Anything you'd like to hit before we go?
Boy, put me on the spot. No, we have a lot going on. We have a lot going on. We continue.
Are things going apace with the grocery store development?
Yeah. I think they're breaking ground in the next month or so. They're doing environmental cleanup. I think they're planning to break ground soon. There's a lot of contamination on the property, but it's moving forward.
City Hall, what's going on with replacing City Hall?
Yeah, we're still looking at, right now we're looking at, we mentioned the kind of decentralization. We're looking at what really needs to be there and what does that cost. And I'm hopeful honestly in the next few weeks to have an idea of what we really need. Right now we're looking at space. We just found out that we're very inefficient with space. When you have someone in a building, they tend to expand with space. We have a lot of file cabinets that we don't use. We have a lot of wasted space, and taking 85,000 square feet of current space and moving it to another property, it doesn't make sense because we have a lot of wasted space. So we want to figure out, the less space we have, the less cost. Again, I'd like to fund this through the sale of the existing buildings so we don't have to put this on the taxpayers. If we do nothing, we're still putting over $500,000 a year into this building, which is in really bad shape. It needs about $50 to $55 million in improvements. I'd like to we're going to figure out the space, and we're going to figure out where we can go, and then we'd like to get moving. I'm just as eager to do it as you are to know about it. But we have to get it right.
Still interested?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, and I don't like to speak for Paul Beitler. He is still interested. He does still have ideas. We've emailed back and forth a few times, but he's eager, and I'm not surprised. He should be.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. That's it for the March installment of our conversation with the mayor. Presumably, we'll be back in April. From Message Maker Studios in Lansing, I'm Burl Schwartz from City Pulse. Thanks for watching.